Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving into a fascinating and honestly highly consequential regulatory shift. Think about it. Have you ever wondered what happens when an algorithm makes a catastrophic mistake? Who actually takes the blame? Is it the software developer? Is it the machine itself? Well, we are going to look at how the Reserve Bank of India, or RBI, has released draft guidelines that answer that question decisively. We're going to explore how they are holding humans strictly and legally accountable for machine-made decisions through their new Model Risk Management Governance framework.
Okay, let's take a quick look at our roadmap. We have 6 key areas on the agenda today: outcomes over technology, defining a regulatory model, 3 lines of defense, the model lifecycle, taming AI and third parties, and finally, the ultimate kill switch. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. Outcomes over technology. Basically, regulating the result, not the code.
Chapter 2 of the draft guidelines introduces this massive paradigm shift. Instead of getting bogged down in the endless complexities of coding, the RBI is focusing entirely on the outcomes of automated decision-making. The guidelines prescribe that a regulated entity, overseen by its board of directors, is fully accountable for the outcomes of all the models it uses. And here's the kicker. It absolutely doesn't matter if you built the tool in-house with your own engineers or if you bought it right off the shelf from an external vendor. The board is equally on the hook for the result either way. Regulating the outcome is just an incredibly smart way to bring all automated decision-making into the realm of compliance.
Now, this is where it gets wild. The sheer scope of this rule is mind-blowing. When we hear automated decision-making, we instantly think of advanced neural networks, right? Supercomputers. But this regulation sweeps up everyday tools as well. Because the focus is on the decision-making impact, even a basic, internal Excel spreadsheet falls under the strict governance if it's designed to take decisions or influence client outcomes. The board's Model Risk Management Framework has to cover any automated algorithm that creates risk.
Moving on to Section 2. Defining a regulatory model. Let's look at the anatomy of an algorithm.
So how exactly does the RBI define a model anyway? Well, the definition is incredibly broad. They define a model as any algorithm, analytics, interface, decision-based rule, or application using intelligence that has a material impact on decision-making in business processes. This deliberately massive net brings literally any computational tool with a software component into the realm of strict regulation.
To make this easier to actually govern, the RBI breaks the definition down into 3 distinct steps. Step 1 is the input component, which gathers the raw data, the decision rules, and the baseline assumptions. Step 2 is the processing component. This is where the statistical, mathematical, or AI techniques actually analyze and interpret those inputs. And finally, Step 3 is the output component, which results in the actual business and operational decisions. So the crucial takeaway here is how information moves through this system. If your software uses any form of intelligence to move from raw data to an operational decision, congratulations, it's a model and it must be governed.
Section 3. 3 lines of defense. Protecting the process. With such a massive net cast over everything from complex AI down to basic Excel sheets, how do financial institutions actually govern this day-to-day? Well, the framework requires a very strict hierarchy of accountability. The first line of defense rests with the model owners, or the process owners, the folks on the ground. The second line of defense has to be an entirely independent model risk management and validation function. They're there to check the work of the first line. Finally, the third line of defense is a robust and independent internal audit function. It's a structure that perfectly mirrors established data governance best practices, ensuring concurrent supervision and performance testing at multiple, separated levels of the organization.
To manage the sheer volume of models under this framework, the guidelines recommend risk-based tiering. Models have to be classified as either high risk or low risk, and this classification has to be reviewed at least annually. If a model is classified as high risk, based on its potential financial impact on the entity or its potential implication on consumers, it faces some serious oversight. High-risk models can't just be deployed on a whim, they require approval by an appropriate, dedicated committee.
Section 4. The model lifecycle. Going from cradle to grave.
You see, oversight isn't just a one-and-done event at launch. The RBI demands proper documentation and procedures across 5 distinct phases. It starts with selection and development, moves to rigorous validation and approval, and then hits deployment. But Phase 4 is where the real ongoing work happens: continuous online monitoring and change management. Finally, Phase 5 addresses something companies constantly forget about: decommissioning. There must be a definitive business continuity plan and a formalized process for safely retiring unused models.
The institution has to maintain a complete inventory, detailing the owners, developers, intended use, and dependencies for every single model on this timeline. And this beautifully aligns with established data governance principles, like the Data Governance and Protection Standard of India. The guidelines require that the board factor in the entity's specific risk appetite. If an entity needs to step outside the standard risk assessment, they can't just do it quietly in the background. No way. They must adopt a formalized, top management-approved deviation justification document. It leaves a crystal clear, documented paper trail of risk acceptance.
Section 5. Taming AI and Third Parties. Time to manage the black box.
Now we're into Chapter 5, and this is where the regulation aggressively tackles the really complex frontiers of artificial intelligence and external vendors. When it comes to advanced AI, entities must establish rigorous guardrails. First, they have to explicitly define the scope for foundational and frontier AI models. But here is where it gets incredibly tough for vendors. If a third-party AI provider treats their tech like a black box and withholds adequate details about how the model actually works, the regulated entity has to actively identify the risks of that missing information and apply mitigants. That can even include severely limiting the tool's usage. Furthermore, for generative AI models, institutions have to build system-level controls to mitigate hallucinations, especially if those models interact directly with customers. They also have to ensure models don't overfit to training data, and they must continuously monitor for data drift and concept drift.
And you absolutely cannot just feed an AI whatever you scrape off the internet. Institutions have to establish appropriate mitigants to address data risks. They must actively police the data they use, fighting against poor quality, non-representativeness, and incompleteness, all while strictly guarding against intellectual property breaches.
Finally, Section 6. The ultimate kill switch. Let's talk about the requirement for human oversight. This brings us to the climax of the RBI's framework in Chapter 5, focusing on the absolute non-negotiable necessity of human intervention. This exact phrase right here, human in command, grounds the entire complex regulation. The RBI explicitly states that robust human oversight must be established for AI models. No matter how advanced the machine gets, no matter how lightning-fast it calculates, a human must remain fully in control of the automated decision-making process. To make human in command a reality, institutions are required to build in manual oversight routines. This means designing human-in-the-loop or human-on-the-loop arrangements. It demands periodic review of model outputs by human workers specifically tasked with spotting anomalies before they cascade into systemic failures. And crucially, it requires mandatory override, suspension, or deactivation mechanisms. And this brings us to the ultimate safeguard. It's explicitly and literally named in the regulatory text, kill switch arrangements. Financial institutions must possess the physical or digital capability to instantly pull the plug on rogue algorithms. If the AI starts hallucinating, drifting, or making biased financial decisions, the human operator must have a big red button to shut it down immediately.
The RBI has really produced one of the most mature regulatory approaches to AI governance out there by embedding lifecycle management, board accountability, and strict human oversight into the very fabric of financial regulation. But as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this provocative thought. In an era where we increasingly rely on algorithms for speed and efficiency, are financial institutions truly ready to pull the plug on their automated decision makers when the time comes? We are entering a brand new regulatory reality, where machines might do the processing, but humans will always take the fall. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning the data.